This may be old news, bub, but I still do think that it provides us with some interesting conversation opportunities for both the Pittsburgh Penguins and the Montreal Canadiens. It is Saturday, folks, the end of the week here, and we are diving into some really interesting discussions in regards to Sid the Kid. Sidney Crosby, 38 years old, signed on till the end of 2026-2027 at $8.7 million a year. Now, we've already made our few commentaries talking about Crosby and the idea of him leaving Pittsburgh. The Pens are the only team, essentially, in the National Hockey League that has outwardly expressed a willingness to sell. Crosby is not a part of that, but Carlson, Brian Rust, Rickard Rakell, these guys are up for grabs, and the Penguins, they have some pretty high prices out there, so it's all going to depend on what Kyle Dubas is willing to negotiate with for 3 of the top 4 Penguins scorers this most recent campaign. These guys could all be on other teams by the start of the season, who really knows? But the guy who is number 1, Sid the Kid, could be setting himself up for a Bugatti in a rundown, beatdown house scenario if he continues to be as great as he is, and if the Penguins continue to play as poorly as they have been the past few years. Crosby trade rumors will not die down. We understand this, it's just the nature of the market, even though Sid himself has expressed that he wants to stay in Pittsburgh, and even though some Penguins beat writers have said as well that it's disrespectful to Sidney to keep on talking about him in a trade-like capacity. But in this video, I wanted to go out there and refer to a post made on Twitter about a month ago by David Ettedgui. He's a sports management hockey agent and an analyst at BPM Sports on the radio, and he had a really interesting tweet from July 15th, that's what it was, talking about Sidney Crosby and what it would take for him to come to Montreal. This is all written out here in French, so we're going to translate it to English. Thanks, Grok. Only, like, the very few times it can actually be useful, to be honest. But David Ettedgui's post will be discussed about here. I do think that there are some interesting topics that are discussed in this post. Let's dive into it, shall we? Ettedgui writes about the rumors of Sidney Crosby coming to Montreal. Here's his analysis. 1. There are several rumors regarding the possible arrival of Crosby with the Habs. Here's my analysis of the situation, including the timelines and the likelihood of it happening. Are the Montreal Canadiens a preferred destination for Crosby? The answer is yes. As I had mentioned first several years ago on 91.9 Sports/BPM Sports, if it weren't for a former Canadiens player who strongly advised him against signing as a free agent with the Canadiens at the time, there was a good chance he would have been a Canadian for at least 8 years by now. What in the world? A former Canadiens player sabotaged Sidney Crosby's ability to sign with Montreal a few years ago? What? That's news to me. What in the world is that? If that didn't happen, there would have been a good chance Crosby would have been a Hab already? Oh boy. The next point here says, do the Canadiens have the assets to complete such a trade? Absolutely. In fact, Montreal is one of the few teams that possesses everything Pittsburgh would need in return. Now, what exactly that is, I don't want to put a label on it. I'd say multiple firsts and maybe a really, really good prospect, a decent prospect, and then a roster player or something like that. I mean, when you get into players that are as good as Crosby, the levels and the values start to become a little wonky, so I don't think we can put a full price on that until a trade actually gets made. The next point here dives into the timeline. When could Crosby arrive in Montreal? I don't anticipate an arrival before next summer, and this is for 3 main reasons. Okay, so this totally goes against what Nick Kypreos said on Kipper and Bourne a few weeks ago too. But the first point here, Ettedgui says, one of the main reasons Crosby wouldn't come over before next summer is the liquidation of veterans in Pittsburgh. The Penguins will first need to move their other veteran players, including Malkin, Letang, and Karlsson, by the deadline in early 2026. Malkin is probably done after this season, to be honest, so it could be one last hurrah for the guy. Number 2, you have the draft lottery and Gavin McKenna. The Penguins will almost certainly finish near the bottom of the NHL standings and could have a 1-4 to 1-6 chance of drafting the phenom Gavin McKenna. If they succeed, rest assured that unless Crosby insists strongly, Pittsburgh will not trade him and will absolutely want him to play a mentorship role as Lemieux did for him. This lottery will only take place after the next season. And then you have yourselves the aspiration for greatness. If Crosby agrees to leave Pittsburgh, he will absolutely want to play for a team that aspires to great honors in the near future. Hence the insistence of some experts who see him ending up with the Avalanche and his good friend Nathan MacKinnon. The Canadiens will therefore need to show significant progress in 25-26 for Crosby to agree to come to Montreal. In conclusion, in David Ettedgui's opinion, if the Penguins do not secure Gavin McKenna, if the Habs perform very well in the upcoming year, and if they still haven't acquired that coveted high-level second-line center by then, he estimates, without a doubt, that the chances of seeing Crosby in a blue, white, and red jersey will be very, very high, and even greater than those of Colorado or any other team. The coming months will tell. Have a great summer, everyone. And then there's a picture of Crosby in a Habs sweater. Nice. This is a really interesting write-up, and I think a lot of the things that are talked about here, should they come true in the way that Ettedgui is writing, I do think it does up the likelihood of Crosby heading over to Montreal, just assuming that everything goes the way that it's written out here. If the Canadiens are really good, if the Penguins are bad, but not bad enough to get Gavin McKenna, and if they sell off all the other guys and Crosby's the only player left, then there could be a much higher chance that he does head over to a team like Montreal. But if the Canadiens are kind of this upcoming season, if they're kind of whack, if they're not really all too great, then maybe the odds swing more in Colorado's favor than any other team. Crosby and McKinnon, of course, we got a taste of that at the Four Nations. We're probably going to get a bigger taste of that at the Olympics upcoming, so that will certainly be a fun time for everybody in the hockey world. But Sidney Crosby in Montreal does seem like a possibility, if not for a very few select number of things. And I think that Gavin McKenna point is a super intriguing one that just kind of cements how time is a circle and things just keep on repeating over and over again, right? Lemieux to Crosby, Gretzky to McDavid, Crosby to McKenna? Yeah? Crosby acting like the mentor for Gavin McKenna as Lemieux was for him 20 years ago would be so interesting, and just another one of these unfair scenarios where the Penguins get themselves a franchise generational superstar first overall in the draft. So with all this in mind, I want you to let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. How do you feel about David Ettedgui's take on what it would take for Sidney Crosby to head over to the Montreal Canadiens? I hope you enjoyed this video, and bye.